Hello, and today we're going to be reviewing the Ryobi P237 18-volt impact driver, so let's go ahead and get started. Okay, starting off at the bottom of the tool, we have the battery slot, which will accept any of Ryobi's 18-volt batteries. Overall, the battery slot is, well, it's a typical Ryobi battery slot. The battery fits in nice and securely, and there is a very minimum amount of wiggling. I don't think you'll have to worry about the battery falling out accidentally, as long as the battery has been fully inserted, so in my opinion, the battery slot in this particular tool gets a pass. Okay, moving upward, we have the bit holder located on the front of the tool. Overall, the bit holder does a good job of holding onto a single bit and is very useful for when you are working with dual fastener types, say when you're using different types of screws on the same project. Overall, I really do love this feature, and I really wish that it wasn't disappearing off the newest generation of Ryobi tools, and I really think that's a mistake. And for those of you who don't like this feature because it scratches your work surface, which I've never actually had that be a problem in my own personal experience, my solution to you is go with another tool brand, because this has been literally a hallmark on Ryobi tools forever, and rather than changing something that's been a hallmark on a particular tool brand, you can go with one of the tool brands that this isn't a hallmark on, because I'm bitter about this, darn it, and I really wanted to use another word there, but I didn't. So without anything else being said, let's move on to another feature that's disappearing off of this tool, the mag tray. Now, the mag tray on this particular tool has shrunk from previous generations of Ryobi impact drivers and other tools, and it has become much less useful, but it still does provide a fairly decent amount of use for, well, small bits or small screws or the occasional longer bit if you only put one or two on the mag tray. But it's definitely not nearly as useful as it was when it was, well, a full-size mag tray. The mag tray has been something that was on Ryobi tools, well, for several generations, and it was a feature that a lot of people really appreciated. And the fact that it's gone away because, well, it's cheaper to manufacture a tool without this is, well, kind of a disappointment. I've noticed that Ryobi tools seem to be becoming much more, well, streamlined to look like pretty much every other tool on the market, and in my opinion that's definitely a mistake, because you're really not catching the eye of as many people, especially when you take away beloved features, raise the price, and just overall make your tool just, well, a generic tool on the market that uses a different battery type than the professional grade tools on the market. So in my opinion, this is definitely a, well, drawback, but at least this particular drill driver still has a mag tray, so it gets a pass. Okay, moving upward, we have the grip. Now, the grip on this particular tool is a fairly standard Ryobi grip. It's fairly comfortable, and it's going to fit most people's hands as long as you're not King Kong. Now, as far as I'm concerned, Ryobi does a fairly good job with spreading out the rubberized texture across the body of the tool so that you have multiple areas where you can grip the tool, and this drill driver is no exception. There's plenty of rubberized texture in front of the trigger, behind the trigger, on where your hand is gripping, and above of where your hand is gripping, and where your hand might rest against if you're drilling at a weird angle. There's just rubberized texture everywhere where you might need it. So as far as I'm concerned, the rubberized texture is not in any sort of short supply, and is definitely the rubberized texture that I prefer. It's not too hard and it's not too soft. It allows you to grip it, but it doesn't make you feel like that you're going to lose it because it's too soft either. I think Ryobi actually does a really good job with the rubberized texture, and as far as I'm concerned, it gets a pass. Okay, let's move on to the trigger. Now, the trigger on this particular tool is a fairly standard Ryobi trigger. It's made out of a hard black plastic, and it's very smooth, at least the surface of the texture of the plastic is, and it does a fairly good job of, well, having good definition in between the different speeds. And combined with the selector switch on the rear of the tool, you won't have any issue getting the speed that you need for the particular job you are working on. My only complaint is the click before the motor engages. There's a fairly hard click or a bump that you have to get past before the motor engages, and it always makes me think that the safety might not be fully, well, off, or that there's something going on with the trigger. In reality, it's just the way that the tool is designed, and all these particular tools in this particular model series, the P237 series, has this issue. But it's just an annoyance, and it just really kind of bugs me. And I really would have preferred a, well, smooth pull trigger without that little bump. But we got what we got, and it is a good trigger, and I haven't had any major issues with it. So it still gets a pass, but it still will probably end up on the cons list of annoyances with this particular tool. But with that being said, let's move on. Okay, let's move on to the safety / reverse / forward selector switch. Overall, the selector switch is a fairly decent selector switch. I'd say it's right in the Goldilocks zone. It's not too hard to push from side to side or into the safety position, and it's not so soft that it would do it accidentally either. Overall, it always is nice to have a good, well, functioning safety selector switch because, well, when you use a tool that has kind of a crappy one, it's always noticeable when you go to a tool that has a fairly decent one. And I'd say this one is definitely a decent one. Is it going to be the best on the market? No, but it's perfectly adequate for the price, and it does get the job done just fine, and I don't have any complaints, so it gets a pass. Okay, next up we have the speed selector switch. Now the speed selector switch is located on the rear of the tool and is made out of the same kind of plastic that the safety is made out of. Overall, the switch itself works just fine, and in operation you can actually still change it one-handed, which you cannot do on the newest model of tool if you need to change the mode on the newest model tool. It's just too hard to do with one hand. So with this particular tool, the number 1 speed is going to be your lowest speed or your slowest speed, and then number 2 will be a medium speed, and number 3 is going to be your highest speed with the most RPM. So overall, the speed selector switch is a fairly standard design, but it is completely functional and it works just fine, and I don't really have any complaints. And the fact that you can change it one-handed is also a plus in my book. I really wish that they had kept with this particular design instead of replacing the bit holder at the bottom of the tool with a button that you basically have to use your other hand with in order to change, or, well, you either have to set the tool down to change your mode. So at the end of the day, I'm perfectly satisfied with the mode selector switch on this particular tool, and it gets a pass. Okay, next up we have the LED lights. Now the LED lights in this particular tool are still located on the front of the tool, directly in front of the impact housing, and quite frankly, I actually prefer the design that they went with this particular tool. Now in the video we're going to do a quick comparison in between a newer impact driver that is brushless, that features the light at the base of the tool, and the tool that we're currently reviewing that features the tri-LED beams that are located on the front of the impact housing. So we'll see in the video just what it looks like here. Okay, as you can see in the video on the tool that we're currently reviewing, the light is definitely going to be fairly bright, and it's going to be illuminating the area directly in front of the tool very evenly and very brightly. So overall, it's a very good performance, and I really do like the performance that we're getting out of this particular tool in the video. Also, you'll notice that the tool's light will slowly fade until it's off. It takes roughly about 10 seconds in order for it to fade completely off, and this is actually useful if you're working in a dark environment and you need to grab something. So overall, I really do like this performance coming from this tool. Okay, now switching over to the newer and so-called improved impact driver from Ryobi, we have a little bit different light performance. Okay, now with this newer tool, you'll notice that it appears a little bit darker in the frame. I don't think it's actually necessarily darker, I just think that it's spraying the light out more, and so it appears darker because it's spraying the light out more, which some people might say is better, but as far as I'm concerned, the light quality is so weak that it doesn't really provide all that much, well, useful capability. I much prefer the light on the older tool simply because it has the light in a more concentrated area, and it also gives you that slow turn off. The newer tool's light stays on longer, but it turns off abruptly, and so you don't have any sort of warning if your light's about to turn off if you have to set the tool down for a second to grab something. So as far as I'm concerned, I'm going to say that the original tool is the winner in this competition, and the newer tool isn't necessarily improved when it comes to the lighting quality or just how well the light is, well, concentrated. But with that being said, let's move on. Okay, let's move on to the chuck. The chuck is actually a very good chuck on this particular tool. It's a one-hand operational chuck, meaning that it only takes one hand in order to put a bit in or take a bit out. When you release a bit from the chuck will stay open until you insert the next bit, and then all you have to do is pull it forward in order for it to, well, basically launch the bit out, which can be a little bit annoying if you're not used to it, but once you get used to it, it works just fine. It kind of reminds me of those little dart missile things that used to come with Lego sets. So quite frankly, it's kind of a cool little design, and I actually really do appreciate Ryobi going the extra step with this improved chuck over, say, the original chuck that you would find on some of Ryobi's original impact drivers, or on some more modern day impact drivers that are from a cheaper brand, which I will not name. Black & Decker. Okay, without a battery and with a bit inserted, the tool weighs 1,205 grams, which equals out to a little over 2.5 pounds. So it's definitely a little bit on the heavier side when it comes to a modern day impact driver. And with a 4 amp hour battery, the tool weighs 1,862 grams, which is about 4.1 pounds. So it's definitely on the heavier side. And there are definitely other impact drivers on the market that, well, are lighter weight and will provide about the same amount of performance. So it's going to be up to you if this is going to fit your particular needs. Okay, now in operation, the tool actually works quite well, and I don't have any complaints. The highest speed, speed number 3, delivers around 1,800 inch-pounds of torque, And then the medium speed, speed 2, delivers about 1,100 inch-pounds of torque, and the lowest speed, speed 1, will deliver about 400 inch-pounds of torque. So you have plenty of different settings and speeds to work with depending on what your applications are. I generally am always operating in speed 3 because I'm not usually building something that requires delicacy, which is perfectly fine with me. Overall, I'm really actually happy with the overall performance of the tool, and I didn't really notice any major issues while using the tool. And I used it to build several different projects, everything from a pen for a petting zoo to a new shelter for our geese. So I've used it quite extensively at this point, and I'm perfectly happy with the performance, and I think it gets a pass in that regard. I will say that I am not a huge fan of just the overall weight. Like I said earlier, this impact driver is on the heavier side, and while it doesn't appear to be all that bad if you use it in short spurts and set it down, if you are constantly holding the tool for long periods of time, it can get a little bit heavy. Maybe I just need to hit the gym, but at the same time, I have lighter impact drivers that are more comfortable to use over longer periods of time, but they also don't provide as much torque as this particular tool does. So at the end of the day, it's going to be up to you and your own personal preferences, but for me, I think this tool is well worth the price that they are asking for it, which is around, well, $50 US at Home Depot. And you might want to hurry if you are intending to buy this particular tool because it appears to be being phased out. I know, right? Because it has the bit holder and mag tray, they want to get rid of it? Yeah, that's totally what they're doing. I've seen it on discount at a couple of different Home Depots, and it actually is no longer available at my local Home Depots as of, well, yesterday. They've sold out of them. And on the discount section, it was around about $40, which is about $10 below the online asking price. So maybe check your local Home Depots to see if they're currently running at, well, $40, or if they have any in stock. But at the end of the day, I really do like this particular impact driver, and I think it has really good performance, and it has a lot of features that you'll find on a more expensive impact driver at a good price. So I would say that it's a decent option to consider. But with that being said, let's recap with the pros and cons. And the first pro is 3 speeds. This particular impact driver has 3 different speeds you can choose from, and you can change the speed with your one hand while using the impact driver. So that's also another nice feature of this particular tool. Tri-beam light. I really do prefer the tri-beam lights over the newer and improved impact drivers from Ryobi. So quite frankly, I would consider this to be a pro in my opinion. Mag tray. The mag tray can be useful in a variety of different situations, but it's most useful when you're working with small fasteners, and quite frankly, that's about the only time I actually use it on this particular tool since it's so small. But it's still a pro feature in my opinion. 18 volt. This means that you'll be able to work with all your existing 18 volt Ryobi batteries, and quite frankly, you'll be able to adapt batteries over from other brands via third-party adapters at your own risk. So in my opinion, this is another nice feature of the tool. Good power. Overall, this impact driver has plenty of power, and I didn't really run into any situations where I was just wanting more power. So in my opinion, it has plenty of power, and it'll probably work for most applications. Auto load chuck. Overall, the auto load chuck is a nice feature and definitely is an improvement over older generations of Ryobi tools or other brands that do not feature an auto loading chuck. So in my opinion, this is a pro feature. And the first and only meh is the belt clip. On the promotional pictures, it will show a spot on the tool where you can insert 2 screws and a full metal belt clip. In reality, what you're going to be getting is, well, a wire-style belt clip, which is perfectly functional, but is a little bit misleading when it comes to the actual, well, marketing pictures. I'm not a huge fan of this. I really would have preferred the style that they show in the pictures, but the wire one is completely functional and will get the job done. You're just not going to be able to attach any third-party accessories to that belt clip slot since it's not a screw-in slot, it's a wire-style slot, which means it's kind of a meh. And the first con is big and heavy. This tool is a little bit larger than normal, and it's definitely heavier than normal, which means it probably will last a little bit longer since they're using more heavier duty materials in it, which I would assume, which might not be the case, but I'm assuming, but you know what they say about assuming. But let's get back to the point. It's big, it's heavy, and that's a con in my opinion. And the next con is it's on its way out. Yes, this tool appears to be being discontinued, and this is definitely a sad event because this is one of the last impact drivers that was being sold in stores that features a mag tray and bit holder on a Ryobi product. So let's have a moment of silence for those 2 features. Okay, let's move on. Okay, and the last con is, well, that bump on the trigger pull. It's not a smooth trigger pull, and I'm pretty sure that bump you feel is it activating the light on the front of the tool. But for me personally, I really prefer the smooth trigger pulls that you'll find on other impact drivers. It's not a huge deal, and you will get used to it. I'm just saying that it makes it feel, I don't know, defective when it's not. Okay, final thoughts on this particular tool. Overall, I have to say I actually do like this impact driver, which is not what I first thought when I first got it. But at the end of the day, after using it quite a bit, I have to say that I really do like a lot of the features on this particular tool. The bit holder, the mag tray, the tri-beam LED lights, the auto-load bit holder, as well as the 3 speeds make this a little bit more of a premium impact driver. And while it's not going to be as compact or as lightweight as something from, say, Milwaukee or Makita, DeWalt, it definitely will get the job done, and it has plenty of power, so this tool comes recommended. Just remember that it's on its way out, so you'll probably want to act on picking one up sooner than later. And that's it for this particular video. If you liked it, please like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time. God bless.